David Brewster here with a new episode of Scales and Tales, and this is the DeMartini Sequence. And I realize the title I've given this episode makes it sound like some sort of government program or conspiracy, like the Manhattan Project or Da Vinci Code or something like that. But that's not what we're talking about here. Obviously, we're talking about Warren DeMartini and music from the band RATT. And I featured RATT's music multiple times on the channel here, also licks from Warren DeMartini in the past. And this episode is going to focus on a very famous and familiar sequence that Warren liked to use back in the day with RATT's music. It appears multiple times. And then other famous guitarists have borrowed this idea from Warren and expanded it and kind of variated it and made their own licks and variations from Warren's original idea. So this is a great lesson in learning a lick from somebody and then turning it over and making variations and mutations and turning one lick seemingly into 10 or 100 or 1,000 or whatever. So theme and variations from Warren DeMartini. And here we go. So if you'd like to hear the DeMartini sequence in action, you can easily find it in 3 RATT songs. Back for More from the album Out of the Cellar, Give It All from the album Invasion of Your Privacy, or the song Body Talk, which is from Dancing Undercover. And there are some other songs that feature this lick, but I just kind of picked those 3 and just kind of cue up the guitar solo and listen, and you'll hear the sequence, in action. Now finally, to hear this lick in action, here's a clip featuring Warren, and he's playing Back for More, and he totally whips this lick out. I think this was recorded back in 2017, and I did try to locate, Give It All. I couldn't really find a good copy of that. And then I did find a copy of Body Talk, but Warren changed the lick, and he didn't play it the same way he did on the studio version. But this is very similar to what you'll hear on Out of the Cellar on the song Back for More, and here is the DeMartini sequence right here. And of course, we're talking about this sequence right here. One more time. So it's like this quick, fluttery sequence. And, Warren was using his first 3 fingers, index, middle, and third, and didn't use the pinky. You could actually incorporate your pinky finger and make kind of a basic variation right off the bat like this. Some players may not like doing the bends with your pinky like that. But don't be afraid to use your pinky, for bending. And then as far as the sequence itself, just think of E minor pentatonic like the box right here. And you can definitely hear him starting on this B note. And that's where you hear this, kind of, it's a 4-note phrase, but you're going to basically play, an 8th note and then 3, 16th note triplets after it. Like that. So it's B and then D, B, A. Like that. And you continue that sequence all the way up. So here, and then here, and then here, and then here. And when he gets to the B string, that's where he starts doing that bend. Like that. So slowly through it. And you could do it like Warren did, with the first 3 fingers and not use the pinky like this. But that's basically the DeMartini sequence right there. So Warren actually started that sequence on the A string. Let's go all the way through the scale and actually start, on the low E right here. And then run that all the way through like this. Right? Now that's the first little variation there, just incorporating the low E string. Now let's take that and move it down a minor third, move it down 3 frets. And that's one of my favorite things to do in a minor key, because it kind of gives you a different, view of what you're playing with. Also, obviously, you're in another key. But you could take that and do it down a minor third right here. And you could take Warren's lick and do it down a minor third right there. But then taking that full sequence right here and and kind of reworking it, in another position and in another key, and that expands that idea beyond where we started. So with that relocation, we basically moved from E minor to C sharp minor, right? So let's just lock into that C sharp minor now that we've relocated. Now let's play with something different here, and this is a rolling triplet sequence, loosely based around the DeMartini sequence, and it's definitely going to help us set up the next idea. But something like this. And you can see we're just kind of rolling our way through that scale 3 notes at a time, but we're doing this gradual kind of climbing while we're ascending, but we're also descending. So it's an interesting phrase because the notes are descending, but we're ascending our way through that scale like that. Right? Now you can actually play that backwards. You could ascend like this. Well, you're ascending with notes, but descending through the scale, like that. And the interesting thing here, as soon as you start playing with sequences like that, it doesn't really sound like minor pentatonic anymore, even though it technically still is. But you're just kind of approaching the notes differently. They're rolling like kind of an interesting and unusual way, like that. Right? So I just shared that image that had the album cover from Dream Theater's Awake and also the cover from Mr. Big Live, the concert home video. And the next 2 examples are variations of the DeMartini sequence, but they're coming from John Petrucci and also Paul Gilbert. I think I remember seeing Paul Gilbert refer to that exact sequence as the DeMartini sequence, which is probably where I picked up the terminology and started calling it that. But this came from Voices, and keep in mind, I'm tuned down a half step to match Warren DeMartini. John was in standard tuning on Voices, and actually played this lick in a different key, too. But we're just going to keep it in C sharp minor right there, and it's this double-picked kind of Warren DeMartini sequence variation, like this. One more time. And right there, you could do it either way at the end. I slid it with my 3rd finger the first time, and then my pinky the second time. There's no bend this time, but there is a slide. But we're doing this. Right? And, it's kind of loosely based around that rolling triplet. But now we're double picking, right? Right here. And then right there. Like that lick, it has this blurry, busy sound. That's really cool. Okay, last but not least is a Paul Gilbert variation of the DeMartini sequence, and this actually came from his live guitar solo in the Mr. Big Live home video concert, back from 1992. And this is a very famous, Paul Gilbert sequence, but he totally borrowed the basic idea or form from Warren DeMartini, and it's something like this. Definitely Warren DeMartini, but it's Paul Gilbert style. And that initial sequence is very demanding. Definitely a kind of a step up from where we started. But now we're doing this. So he's expanded the sequence. So if we kind of break down what Paul did there, he obviously expanded the sequence for one thing, because we started with this, right? And then Paul is doing this. So a longer, sequence of notes for one thing during the sequence like that. Right? So you're starting on that that G sharp right there. Then move to the D string, start on C sharp and do a similar, movement, but like this. Right? Same thing on the G. And the same thing on the B. that sequence. You know, it has this nice kind of flow to it. And there's just something about the way, you know, he kind of put that together. It's really cool. And you can kind of see where it came from, you know, like the... to the... And of course he starts doing the string skipping move in there. I mean, could it be Paul Gilbert without string skipping? I don't know, because I love when he starts string skipping. But that's a cool sequence for sure. Alright, that's going to wrap this episode of Scales and Tales with the DeMartini Sequence, and I've been a Warren DeMartini fan since the very beginning. You know, I was initially inspired by Eddie Van Halen to start playing guitar, and then after, you know, a little bit of time, I ventured out and started finding people like George Lynch and Jake E. Lee, of course Warren DeMartini of RATT, and, you know, eventually people like Vito Bratta and Reb Beach, and Steve Vai and Satriani and Yngwie and the gang. But there's something about Warren's playing, and at times he reminds me of Van Halen if you remove the tapping and all the bar abuse and just look at phrasing and sequencing and scale runs and stuff. Definitely Warren, you know, has some Van Halen isms, you know, hiding in the style, but then he has his own approach and own things too. And he did a lot more than just this DeMartini sequence, you know, in his music. He has some really cool, like 3-note per string ideas and sequenced runs, you know, using 3 notes per string. But this idea has definitely popped up in his music, not to mention music from other guitarists. So I wanted to attack this or approach it, you know, like, hey, that DeMartini sequence is really cool. So anyway, leave some feedback and comments. Please subscribe to my lessons, and I'll be back before you know with more content and material. Thank you.